Hello, everyone, and welcome to the channel. My name is Chris LeCompte, although throughout the years you may have known me as Ref or Mr. Official. I've been a referee since 2011. I've reffed a whole bunch of different sports. In Quidditch, the highlight reel of my reffing is I reffed U.S. Quidditch Cups 8, 9, 11, and 12. I reffed at the MLQ Championships in 2015 and the most recent ones in 2019. I've also refereed at the IQA World Cup 2016 and in 2018, and I plan to be reffing at the IQA World Cup 2020. And I reffed at the European Games 2017. I've been running around the block a lot, so I thought I would share some of my perspective as I've been a ref in games, on calls or no calls that I've made throughout games. If you have any questions about the calls or no calls that I make in the games that I'm doing, leave a comment and I'll let you know my perspective. So welcome to my first video. This is going to be about the MLQ Championship Finals from 2019, the game 1 of the Boston Knight Riders versus the Austin Outlaws. Let's dive in. So here after Brooms Down and before the Ready Brooms Up call, I'm asking each of my referees if they are ready to go. I want to make sure they are all on the game. My usual start game setup is that one of my referees, whoever I feel is most confident in calling contact fouls, watches the contested bludger on Brooms Up. Then the most confident beat referee watches the uncontested bludgers on Brooms Up, looking for quick beats. And then the last two ARs are watching the starting lines to make sure the players are behind them. So I give a thumbs up. I ask for a thumbs up from each of those players. I give them a thumbs up, and I ask for a thumbs up in return from each of those referees to make sure they are all set and ready to go. In a big game like this, I'm definitely also going to make sure that the scorekeeper and timekeeper are in and ready to go as well.
Up, Austin gets the ball. It's going to be a little bit of a clash of styles. Interesting to see my ref still staying in the game of Peter here, along with Travis. It might just be a level of a show.
So right there, what you just see on the point chaser is the point chaser goes to cut in and then turns and runs away. And after they've turned and already taken a couple steps away, the point chaser engages from behind. That point chaser pretty quickly lets go, and that tackle was pretty quickly broken by the ball carrier. So it ends up being a back to hoops, which is still the appropriate foul, I would say, from here. But yeah, so because it's broken super quickly, because it doesn't really impact the play much, it ends up being a back to hoops here.
No respect for how talented Boston Peters players are after Dillon as well as Havlin. Greg Warren, keeper in for the Outlaws. He's the man with the ball. It's a quick block there. It's going to be a goal. Nice block and shot doing this championship. And a bad pass there by Aaron Goddessy, but he's going to be able to pick up his. They're saying he was still in bounds.
So right here, this was a pretty tough play to officiate, and there's a lot of things going bang, bang, bang. It's about 3 calls that have to be made really, really quickly. The first call that's being made is, does the ball or the player go out of bounds? And in that circumstance, the ball and the player didn't go out of bounds. From my perspective, and no AR called it, it looked like the feet and the ball didn't touch the line, they stayed in bounds. The next call that you have to consider is that contact foul. So we're going to rewind here and take a closer look. So right here, we've got 2 players running after a loose quaffle. Now, whenever you have 2 players running after a loose ball, there's a couple things to watch out for. Number 1 is an illegal slide or dive. One of those players is very likely to try and dive to the ground to get to that ball first. And if they dive in a way that's dangerous, they might end up tripping the other player, or they might just be creating a dangerous situation. And if that's the case, then you have to make sure you penalize it appropriately or adjudicate that appropriately. So I'm watching for those kinds of slides or dives. I'm watching to see if the ball or either player steps out of bounds on this play. So those are the couple things. So looking at the contact here, we're going to look at this contact here and see whether it is illegal. So going frame by frame or just a couple frames at a time, we can see that the player here, I think Aaron Goddessy, picks up the quaffle and turns and puts his back and butt into, I think that's Justin Cole. So he puts his back into Justin and then proceeds to try and make a play. Now, Justin was on the very last couple steps, maybe one or 1.5 step before getting to the ball. So in the Austin, when Arian picks it up and makes that turn to put his back into Justin, it's now his fault that Justin is hitting him from behind or is making contact from behind. Now, that doesn't mean Justin can just suddenly charge or suddenly initiate an extra push, but all that momentum Justin was carrying taking into account of how much he can stop, is really his fault for getting hit like that. So you're going to see Justin try to stop, ends up doing a little bit of a body block, but because that body block is the offensive or the ball carrier's fault that the contact is made, there's no back contact foul here. And now he picks it up just on the other side of midline and then throws it back to another player behind the midline, which does make this a reset. So all in all, the call here is really just reset used for Austin, and no call is made on the contact or that they were out of bounds.
They're saying he was still in bounds, so he recovers. The pass was fine. Having Zoo and Kay McBride. Ball goes behind the hoops, and it's McBride there, and the hoop goes down. She takes a shot, it's gone. No good there from McBride as the hoop gets ball down. We might see a card here on the keeper, Jake Archibald.
So right here, the stoppage in play is going to be for reckless hoop dislodgement on Jake Archibald. That's the keeper for Boston. We're going to rewind and take a closer look at that play and see why. Why is that a yellow card for reckless hoop dislodgement? The hoop's still up. The ball pass is going to go to this chaser right here. I can't tell who that is. And Jake, who's defending, is going to come across and try and make the stop. And in order to do so, he's going to put his hands up through the hoop to try and stop the shot. Perfectly reasonable defensive play, but unfortunately it doesn't work out well for him. Right there, he puts his hand up, and then he puts it through the hoop and takes the hoop down with him. Now, I believe the commentator said that this is Erin McBride. So she tries to score, but she could have jammed it through that hoop. Had he not blocked it or taken the hoop down, she could have jammed it through the hoop, and that means it's going to affect the play. She now has to make a juke to another hoop. Since there's a beater here who can easily beat her if she attempts to go for another hoop, she's only got a couple passing options here, and even then, a passing option is less than a goal. This does end up affecting the play.
The hoop sends McBride there, and the hoop goes down. She takes a shot, it's gone. What Boston needs to have here, especially only one bludger. Their offense hasn't looked great yet.
There's a couple things that are going on really well here from an officiating standpoint. This AR has moved down so that he can still see this beater interaction here, which is excellent. And the other AR is actually off screen right here. She's standing just out of the way of this player so that she's still in the right position down here, still able to see beaters here and up in front of the hoops. But she's far enough down where we're supposed to be, but she's not in the way of the play. So as they carry the quaffle of the field, there's a play that's going to happen that's bang, bang, really fast, very borderline play. And I'm going to give you my perspective on it in terms of what I thought happened, what I can see from the camera, and where I think that call could have gone the multiple avenues and why the call was made that was made.
Beckman not stepping up in time. Now he's going to step up to the wrap with a good tackle from Beckman. They're going to do pass to McBride. Aaron McBride's going to put it through. What I think we might be getting here is a defenseless.
So this AR is coming in to make a call. Again, this is the AR clear from the other side of the field. Now, the call I'm discussing is the hit that's made right here. On the pass from Andrews goes to that player, who then goes to, I believe they said it was McBride, who then scores. Now, the question is, was that a defenseless receiver hit? So the rule says a defenseless receiver is someone who's catching a ball that's in the air and has no ability to defend themselves. Once they've reestablished their footing, they're good to go. They're a clean hit. Or they're a clear target. Now, in this particular play, or you can rewind and take a closer look at it. This particular play is really, really close. So you're going to watch the keeper here who's going to get wrapped up and I believe toss it to this player here, who's going to get hit and then toss it to this player here. So he just tossed the ball right here. It's going to be going to this player here who's going to take a hit. So this is a really tight play. It's really tight. And from my perspective, it is hard to see. Now, it's really hard to ref from still frames. From my perspective as the ref on the field, it looks like the player had caught, and from my perspective, wasn't a defenseless receiver at the time. He also was able to dish it off to another player who's then is immediately able to score. In that case, in the way he's able to defend himself by making an offensive play and getting rid of the ball. So in addition, a straight red card foul, like a defenseless receiver foul, needs to be something pretty egregious and pretty dangerous. In this case, it definitely doesn't rise to the level of, yes, that should be a red card. That is incredibly illegal, incredibly dangerous. it doesn't really seem to rise to that level of severity. It might by the textbook definition, depending on your particular experiences as a referee or as a player or as a coach. But from my perspective and from my experiences, that didn't rise to the level of a red card or any card, as a matter of fact, especially considering Austin scores immediately off the play. No one is close to being injured. Nothing is especially dangerous about this play. No call is made. I could understand why someone might make a helpless receiver call or hit from behind call. I can understand. You have the evidence for those. I just did not on the field believe that was the right call.
Tackle segment. They're going to do pass to McBride. Aaron McBride's going to play. What I think we might be getting here is a defensive. Skura not finding a whole lot of options. He's going to have to. That's going to be a good shot. Skura.
So right there, what you're seeing is an excellent play by Boston where they make a shot from an oblique angle. And whenever you make a shot, you really always want to play to the whistle. You're seeing an excellent play by Harry Greenhouse there to play to the whistle. Ball goes through the hoop. Harry picks it up and immediately puts it through another hoop. That's an excellent play from the players. From the referee's perspective, as you watch that ball go through, you're trying to make the call. You're watching it. You're trying to determine if that ball went through the hoop, especially at weird angles. You have to take a lot of factors into consideration. But if as soon as it goes through, you see another player pick it up and put it right back through another hoop, well, then the point is moot. It went through one way or another. Even if it didn't go through the first time, it went through the second time, so you know a goal was scored in that series of events. So it is incredibly useful for players in case the referee doesn't think it went through, or according to their best evidence, it doesn't go through, and they call it no good, but you play to the whistle and then put it through a hoop again, you're doing great. And if the quaffle goes through and the ref agrees that it went through, but before the whistle you pick it up and dunk it through another hoop, well, you're not committing any fouls there, and you're getting a little extra dunking practice. It's always good practice. More or less, it's always good practice to play to the whistle.
With a great shot. How to make Costa. Yeah, but you can see Irwin just slipped right into the
So right here, you can see more of this positioning I've been doing. I've shifted all the way over to the sideline as the play has been isolated over here to the left sideline. So I've shifted over because I want to, again, get a good angle on the ball carriers, and I want to be able to get a good angle on the defenders and on this sideline to see if anyone steps out.
Travis, so they're unable to get possession of it. But he's going to create an offensive opportunity, and Mulcahy over the top. You're not going to get better. But Dillman and Nassif immediately got.
So right here, you're going to see an excellent move by the goal judge. The goal judge down here, who in this game I think was Fraser Posford, he takes the quaffle and he puts it on the ground just outside the hard boundary. Because it wasn't a goal scored or a by rule turnover, such as a throw after beat, this is an inbound. This ball has to be inbounded. So because the ball is inbounded, he puts the ball here at the line so that the, I think that's going to be the previously defending keeper or the nearest chaser, has to come out and inbound that ball. Excellent, excellent heads-up awareness by the goal judge here.
Pleasure control back for Boston here. That's the shockingly blocked Metabito.
Another thing happened on that play. That is an excellent use of ref discretion. So we're going to back up so you can take a look. It's going to happen on the left side of your screen there on the Austin sideline. So this bludger is going to be rolling towards the sideline. You're going to see this, I believe it's a team volunteer of some sort for Austin, is going to step up and they're going to stop it from rolling off the sideline.
But Dillman and Nassif immediately got bludger control back for Boston here.
So they stop it from rolling off the sideline so that I believe that's Aaron McBride can come pick up the bludger. Now, technically by rule, for a substitute to intentionally interact with the game ball is a straight red card. That doesn't need to be the case here because there's no one else going after the ball. There's no chance Boston will recover that ball. And it wouldn't have been Boston's ball anyway when it left the pitch. So it's a good thing that they stopped it. Otherwise, this beater has to run off pitch. And once they're off pitch, it's much harder to control the environment. So I don't want them to get hurt by running off pitch. So that is an excellent no call by the assistant ref on that side. And that is just a nice thing for the sideline player to do there, or the sideline staff member to do. So excellent no call by the AR here.
And Nassif's going to protect control here, but Josh Andrews is going to slip. For a moment, he had an opportunity for no blitz.
Ooh, that's a beautiful. That was a beautiful play by Teddy Costa there. Absolutely excellent to avoid committing a back contact foul. I want to watch that one more time so you can see what happens. Josh Andrews, the keeper for Austin, ends up falling and losing the quaffle, and Teddy Costa has to make a really fast play, and he makes an absolutely excellent play to make sure all of his play is legal. So he comes across after the reset, and right there he slips, and the quaffle's going to come out. Now Teddy Costa is right here, and he wants to get after the quaffle, which is here. Now, in the heat of the game, he might just try to dive straight on the quaffle. In that case, it is very likely he'll end up charging Josh Andrews in the back at the same time. But he doesn't. He makes a different choice so that he doesn't end up making back contact.
Control here, but Josh Andrews is going to slip.
Right there. He waits for Josh Andrews to get up, and then he goes for the arm wrap. He wraps up the arm, and then he starts to bring the player down by his arm, which is an excellent choice when the other option is an illegal card. In this case, you might ask about the yanking rule that the IQA has with this count. This is not going to end up being yanking. It's just a simple pull. It's not a yank. It's a pull and bringing the player to the ground by a smooth pull of the arm. And that just isn't a yank. Yank's a sudden jerking force. This is a simple attempt to bring them to the ground by their arm.
For a moment, he had an opportunity for a no pleasure situation. He's not able to take advantage of it. One thing you might notice, this turf is very player friendly in terms of the fact that it doesn't heat up and it's very soft. As it coming around the edge.
So now, as the quaffle transitions to behind the hoops and it starts moving along behind the hoop, you're going to see me as the head ref make a motion that's going to look like I'm moving asymptotically towards the keeper zone line here. I'm going to start shifting this way. The reason why I don't get much closer is because I don't want to block the box here, the box between the hoops, the keeper zone line, and the hoop on the other side. I don't want to block the box because that's a very real place that someone could go for a pass for an alley-oop. And if I'm in the way, then I might take away a passing or a scoring option, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to make sure I stay behind the keeper zone line. I do have to get close enough to see the play, and for the most part, you can see the play from there. You'll be able to see most fouls from there. But that's pretty much where I'm going to move to here. This also requires a great amount of trust in my assistant ref, goal judge, and other assistant ref, who are all excellent. They've shown that in this game, and they've shown that in previous games of the weekend. So because I had so much trust in those three, I knew that if by staying here at the keeper zone line, I'd still be able to fairly adjudicate this game and fairly watch for any safety or rulebook violations.
Now she's going to be free to run towards the hoop. There's no letter, and she does. Now the beater steps. Costa comes in. Bludger control. What there is she's going to be able to go get the bludger back. Oh, huge dodge from Monroe, and he's going to get a foul.
Yeah, you're going to see a pretty clear foul here by this player here. I'm going to go ahead and rewind to take a closer look at the preceding play. So this player by Austin gets tackled and coughs the ball up, aiming for this player. I believe it's Augie Monroe. When Augie goes to get the ball, this beater throws their bludger at Augie, who has to dodge it. In that time, one of the Boston players catches up to the play. Now, with the ball on the ground, Augie goes to make a swat at the ball and goes to knock it back somewhere else. And Boston is going to try and get possession. So he's going to try and dive on the ball. And because of his momentum of the dive and because he wasn't watching where his momentum would take him, he ends up taking out the legs of Augie. And that is going to be illegal. It's dangerous on its own. It also is illegal contact below the knee. And that's going to make this either dangerous slide and illegal contact below the knee. 2 yellow cards in one motion. You just give the yellow card for one of them. This ends up being a yellow card for illegal contact below the knee.
Dodge from Monroe, and he's going to get a foul, and they'll get you for a slide. Garza going to shoot. Garza's no good.
So this quaffle is going towards the sideline, and you're going to see a pretty intense bang-bang play that's going to occur. There's going to be a lot of things going on, and this goal judge is about to make an absolutely fantastic call here. This is going to become a team effort between the goal judge and the head ref to make this call, but the goal judge seeing this and calling it is an excellent, excellent call. So it's really hard to see here on the camera, but I'll break it down once we see it.
We've got to race to the sideline. McBride's going to get pushed by Archibald. Meanwhile,
the goal ref's got their hand up. And they are indicating that there is a foul of some sort. They're going to stop me. Now, to explain what the goal judge is going to tell me and what the call is going to be. As they're racing towards the ball, the female chaser for the Outlaws picks the ball up and realizes that she's about to go out of bounds and doesn't want to turn it over. So she turns and spikes it off of Jake Archibald, the Boston keeper, and sends it out of bounds. Now, that is propelling the ball with the intent of sending it out of bounds, which earns them a blue card and turns the ball over to Boston there at the back. That's the call being made. Now, the other element of that was there a push out of bounds, or was there a push from behind on the keeper for Boston? We're going to rewind the tape and take a closer look. So this quaffle is racing towards the boundary. This chaser is going to run for it. This is the person who's going to pick it up and slam it off of the keeper. And we're going to watch what happens. Now, the film's a little grainy, but we're going to be able to pick this apart.
Ours is no good. We've got a race.
So right here, this chaser picks it up and has positioned herself with her back to Jake, and such that Jake's maybe a half step away from this chaser. So there's almost no way he can stop his momentum in just a half step. I mean, he's good, but a full step I'll give him, but a half step, no, he's not going to stop his momentum there, or be able to stop it completely there. Or at least it's unreasonable to expect him to be able to stop it there. So right here, that's what you're going to see here, is she's going to put herself in front. He can't stop his momentum, and that momentum carries him into her from behind, and she's going to end up being pushed out of bounds by that momentum.
It's a sideline. McBride's going to get pushed by Archibald.
In addition, she slams it off of Jake Archibald. In this case, there's no foul on the keeper because it is the Austin's player's fault for positioning themselves at the last possible second with their back to that player, right in front of that player. In addition, they committed the blue card foul of spiking it off of Boston to send it out of bounds. That is propelling the ball with intent to send it off pitch, and ends up being a blue card.
Now Monroe's going to come back into the quaffle game with Gregoire.
Okay, so Augie Monroe here makes an absolutely great play to prevent the reset from being used. Quaffle's being carried up by the chaser. Now the chaser has crossed midfield line and turns to throw it back to Augie Monroe, who I believe is going to be the primary ball handler here. Goes to make that throw back. Augie realizes he doesn't want the reset used, so he makes a pretty good play to prevent the reset from being used. Pass goes back. He catches it. He catches it with his feet and his body beyond the line and pulls that ball across the line with him, preventing the reset from being used here.
What a reaction play by TK to just steal it right out from her.
One excellent thing going on here is Josh Mansfield here getting right in top in that scrum. He's still a little farther away than I would like a ref to be when there's a scrum, and I'm moving towards the quaffle scrum here. I shouldn't be moving faster to get closer to that. But right here, Josh is really right on top of the scrum. That is absolutely excellent officiating. You really want to be on top of any scrums, especially if you're an assistant ref and there's a beater scrum going on. You want to be there.
Very nice. He was trying to toy with them. Great player from TK, but unable. McBride's had herself a really nice game here.
All right, right here. The player for Austin makes an absolutely great play to draw a card. It's going to be the keeper, Matthew Gregoire. He gets the quaffle here in his zone. He's protected. He turns and looks back and sees this Boston player closing in and realizes he hasn't left the zone yet. So he's going to stop right before he leaves to help draw that card. Now, it is on the Boston player to not make that contact because that's still a protected keeper. And so, protected keeper stops, and you're going to see him draw the foul. At which point, the player goes ahead and makes the contact. Now, one thing that I find really irritating is when players start doing this number, where they ask, come on, ref, there's a foul, come on, the foul, ref. Yes, the foul is already being called here. Trust us, the ref's got this.
And he just puts it through. So a big foul there.
So two things happen. A player spikes their broom over here, and another player tosses the broom way off to the side. Now, the game isn't over, but they thought it was. So what happens here is I have a choice to make. I can give them a yellow card for dangerous or possibly reckless play, or I can choose to give them a warning. Neither player hits anyone, and neither player is close to hitting anyone. In fact, the broom toss over here actually waited for the only player in the area to move out of the way and then threw it away from everyone else. In the broom spike, there's no one else nearby. That's not going to hit anyone except maybe themselves. Now, they think the game is over, so I'm going to have to go ahead and do a little bit of coaxing and coaching, and I end up stopping the play to inform them the game's not over yet. It's 135 to 110. Austin needs one more score. And I choose to give the warning here. Giving the card would probably escalate the situation and would probably make the situation a lot worse. Not giving the card will de-escalate the situation. And when it comes to frustrated players, frustrated captains, or frustrated spectators, you really want to de-escalate the situation. Now, sometimes that means giving the card and removing them from the game. Not necessarily ejecting them, but removing them from the play, putting them in the box for a little bit. Sometimes that means talking to a captain about a player that is frustrated and saying, this player is frustrated. I need you to make sure that they calm down before they come back in the game. Okay? And sometimes that means giving that player a warning, saying, listen, you're frustrated. Here's why you're frustrated. I'm going to need you to not be frustrated right now. Save that for once you get off the pitch. If you really can't handle this right now, you can sub off. And I have more than one occasion given an injury substitute for someone who was so upset they couldn't stay on the field. Stopped play. They're so frustrated. They're so upset. We subbed them off like it was an injury sub. Because honestly, mental and emotional injuries can be as devastating or debilitating as physical injuries. And that's the best strategy for de-escalating the situation, or at least in those circumstances, that was the best strategy for de-escalating the situation. Again, the goal here is to de-escalate the situation. I'm valuing the safety of the players. I don't want there to be a fight. I don't want them to get really, really mad at each other or at myself, and I don't want them hurting each other. In this case, the best way to de-escalate and bring everyone down is to just give some warnings and let the game continue.
Not able to hold as a point defender against Augustine Monroe.
Yeah, you're going to see them make the mistake. They have to run and go get it.
5 to 110. One more goal will propel Austin to a 1-0 series lead here in the final.
I end up calling another stoppage to remind them that, hey, it's game's not over. And I think the ARs came in to tell me about the broom toss and the broom spike. And again, warning is the best call. Those players didn't hit anyone with those. They were only expressing frustration at themselves or at their own team. It was not frustration at anyone. There was no out loud swearing. That was the right call.
Steal. It's the second of the game. And Irwin's able to knock it back a little further. And eventually, I believe that Josh Andrews falling on it. Liam Duncan's going to beat him, though. Archibald's going to eventually come with the ball and shoot. He's going to score. Hits his shot from distance. That's the second time in this game that Archibald's gone and stolen from guys. The first time resulted in an Austin goal. This time it's a scrum in the middle field. Dillman is the first to the play. And afterwards, Archibald comes to the ball and makes a great shot.
Now, at this point, if you're reffing this game, a lot of refs like to coast on their instincts. They like to relax on their reactions and on their instincts. Now, when you're reffing a high-level game like a championship finals, you really can't be doing that at any point. But in the event you fall into that habit, when the game is close, in this case, the set score means Austin needs one more goal, Boston only needs two more goals. Every call or no call you make is going to matter. You can't rely on your reactions. Every call has to be an active decision of call or no call at this point. And so if you were relaxing, you caught yourself relaxing on your back feet, this is when you step up your game, you make sure you're on top, and you are doing everything you possibly can to make sure you are staying with the play. Running, moving, watching the play, and actively deciding call or no call. You should be doing that normally, but in the event you found yourself in a trap, the fact that you might be hearing some of the players saying one more goal or one more goal or one more catch or catch the snitch, those kinds of end game scenarios, that's when you really need to make sure you are focused in. If you were relying on your instincts, stop doing that and focus in.
Just about half. Yeah, 2/3 of the way. One goal apiece to win it. Big possession for Boston. It's going to be Costa. He's going to fire. He's going to score. And it is next goal wins here in game 1 of the final. 135 Austin.
Next goal wins even more so. On your toes, ready to go. Now here, I make a pretty bad call here. I'm going to be honest. This is probably the worst call I made all series. And what happens here is Austin is called for a timeout. Now in USQ, you can call for a timeout at any point in the game. In MLQ, you can only call for a timeout before the snitch is released, so in the first 20 minutes. I think it's actually the first 19 minutes per the MLQ rules. Now, I had gotten my rule books conflated in my head. They call for the timeout, I stop play, and I check with an AR as to whether or not they can. The AR says, no, they cannot. I say, okay. And I decide, no harm, no foul. They didn't get the timeout. Neither team ran onto the field to take their timeout. It's no harm, no foul. Both teams are equally advantaged by this. There's no Boston player anywhere near Austin who would potentially steal the ball or steal the quaffle. It seemed like a no harm, no foul situation. By rule, I have to give the blue card to this player. Now, because the game is so tight, I really should have given the blue card here. They made the foul. They committed the foul. It's not fair to not give that blue card. It really isn't no harm, no foul in this circumstance. I declare it no harm, no foul on the field. I missed that call. It happens. It's what happened.
Step Bermuda's with the ball.
Now, after this pass, you're going to see a foul committed, and the foul the ref calls on the field, which is myself, the foul I call on the field isn't necessarily, looking at the replay, the foul I would have called. This player right here is going to go ahead and make a play on the ball being received here. The commentators ask, is this a helpless receiver call? I'll address that as well. I'll address the call I actually make and the call I think I should have made.
A misbeat there from.
So right there comes this charge in. Now, the commentators ask, is this a helpless receiver? Now, by rule, a helpless receiver is someone who is receiving a quaffle that is in the air and unable to defend themselves. This player has both their feet planted firmly on the ground, and they are going after a ball that is on the ground, which means they're not a helpless receiver by rule. So it's not the helpless receiver call. Now, the call I'm going to make is a contact from behind, which is a borderline call. It's a close call. It's not unreasonable to make. But looking at this replay footage here, that player, the Austin player, doesn't have possession of the ball when they get hit, which means this really should have been called an illegal charge on a player who doesn't have the ball. That's really what the call should have been. A contact from behind is okay. I think it's also a valid call to make. It is not, however, the clearer of the two calls. And there are two calls to be made, and one of them is much clearer, that the offensive player didn't yet have the ball. And that's the call that should have been made because that's much, much clearer.
That is gonna be a helpless receiver call, 100%. A misbeat by Nasta, and that might just be the game right there. That play. He's gonna generously not get a red card, though. I'm not sure the color of the card matters. Things are across to Irwin. Irwin's gonna have to reset it. And she steps out of bounds.
Really big call here. The chaser for Austin, Casey Irwin, is running around the outside and is trying to juke around the defender and ends up stepping out of bounds. Now, the assistant ref on that side, who had a much closer and clearer angle, Josh Mansfield, calls her out of bounds, and I agree, immediately coming over to call her out of bounds. Now, at this point, I can stop play, or I don't have to stop play. I can just call her out of bounds and call the turnover and inbounds for Boston. Now, I'm going to start off by trying to call that inbounds for Boston play without having to stop play, and I don't need to stop play in this case. They end up getting the ball, and we inbound it for Boston from the spot that she steps out. But that is a big call, and that is a call you have to make only if you're 100% sure that it happened. Especially in these kind of tight situations, you don't want to be making clear-cut calls like that where the player doesn't step out of bounds. If you're close on whether that player stepped out of bounds, you need to be certain that player steps out of bounds to call that. And Josh Mansfield and I were both certain she stepped out of bounds. We make the call, give the turnover to Boston, and the game continues.
Casey Irwin steps out of bounds. Oh, but then, okay, he almost throws it right through a hoop. What an end of the game that would have been.
Got to watch for those too. If an own goal ends the game, an own goal ends the game. You can't not.
Defensive sequence there by Boston. They're going to have everything to go at this. They might be able to win this. They might be able to win this game right here. It's going to be Acosta. Monroe's going to get beat out. Acosta's going to and Boston wins.
Goal is good.
Boston wins the first.
I have to give a quick check to all of my ARs. None of my ARs are making. So none of my ARs make a call there, so I assume that they're good to go. There's nothing to worry about here, and so the game is over. That means they win game one. So that's that. That's game one of the MLQ 2019 championship finals between Boston and Austin. In terms of giving myself a grade, I would say this was one of my better games of my career. I would give myself an A, not an A+. I think there were a lot of good, appropriate calls. I think there was about one or two missed calls in the game that I really needed to nail to get myself to that perfect score. I think it was, however, one of my best performances of my career. Now, if you check the description down below, what you'll find is you'll find a link for the full game footage so you can see a lot of other calls. In here, I tried to only focus on either no calls that I made or on calls that weren't explained well in the commentary. So there are a lot of other calls that happened in the game, but they were explained in the commentary. So you can go ahead and take a look at those in the full game footage. Also below, you'll find a full strategic analysis of the game from the midline, where they go over all the team strategies and what those teams did and how those teams worked their way towards victory. Okay. Come back next time where I'll be reviewing game 2 and seeing how well game 2 goes and what kind of calls or no calls are made there.